New alarm bells ringing tonight on the coronavirus outbreak in this country.
Doctors say the virus is spread through droplets when someone coughs or sneezes.
And I think the business community, it's in their interest that people actually stay home and stop the spread.
For a business that can allow more employees to telecommute, we want you to do that.
Hi, friends. I'm Andy Paul, host of the Sales Enablement Podcast, and I want to encourage you to listen to my brand new special 6-part podcast miniseries titled Selling with Purpose. The team behind Sales Enablement Podcast and I put together this incredible series of inspiring conversations exploring what it means to sell with a mission greater than just hitting your numbers in this era of COVID-19 and beyond. So tune in to hear from world-class enterprise sales leaders and learn how their 6 companies will close $50 billion selling remotely. See how they've supported essential workers with the products and services they need to stay safe and thrive during this time of crisis. Subscribe to Selling with a Purpose now on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, or wherever you listen to podcasts. Guided selling from RingDNA makes your entire sales team more effective by revealing exactly what reps should do and when to do it. Guided selling works by transforming sales data into a curated list of prioritized sales actions. So when reps start their day, they'll never again wonder which prospects and accounts or hot inbound leads to reach out to next. Guided selling even shifts reps' priority in response to real-time buying signals. Finally, even new reps can sell like seasoned ones. Let RingDNA be your guide to success. Learn more at ringdna.com/guided selling. That's ringdna.com/guided selling. When you make that transition from being in the field and suddenly you're forced to sort of deal remotely with these customers you've had this personal connection with, is you need to slow down.
Yeah, you need to communicate differently. It's harder to communicate over Zoom. People don't listen as well. It's not as engaging. It's not as interactive. It's not as much of a conversation.
Hi, friends. Welcome to the Sales Enablement Podcast. I'm your host, Andy Paul. That was Steve Benson. Steve's the founder and CEO of BadgerMapping, the #1 route planning app for field sales teams. And Steve's joining me on this episode of Sales Enablement to talk about what field sales teams and individual field sellers are doing to adapt to a radically changed sales environment. I mean, after all, it's a huge change for virtual sellers. I mean, inside sales teams to have to work from home. But they've always been virtual. Think about the impact, though, of this work from home transition for sellers who spend their days in the field face-to-face with their buyers. So we're going to dive into how field sellers need to adapt each of their selling processes in order to stay productive during this COVID-19 period. Now, before we get to Steve, I want to let you know how incredibly grateful I am for the organizations and volunteers around this country who are working tirelessly to provide food to our fellow Americans who have been left without secure access to food at this time. If you're interested in making a donation of money or time to support others in need, here are 2 great organizations to support: World Central Kitchen, which was started by Chef Jose Andres, and Feeding America. You can find those at wck.org and feedingamerica.org. All right, let's jump into it. Steve Benson, welcome back to the show.
Thanks a lot. Thanks for having me.
You have a very empty office you're working in today.
Yeah, I'm the only person here. I come in once a week to gather up the checks out of the mailbox and bring them into the bank, and that was so you caught me on that day. But yeah, Badger's been working from home for a while now.
Yeah, so in case people hadn't guessed, if you're listening to this sometime later in 2020 or 2021, we're recording this sort of in the teeth of the stay-at-home, shelter-in-place orders that exist in the Bay Area and many big cities, including Manhattan, where I am as broadcasting from the center of my empire here. And yeah, we're not going outside very often.
That's right.
And if we are, we've now got our bandanas and our masks and blah, 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 blah. So who knew it'd be such an adventure to go to the grocery store?
Yep.
So your business, BadgerMapping, why don't you just explain what, for people who maybe haven't heard you on one of your previous appearances on the show, briefly tell us what you do, and then we'll segue into why we're chatting today.
Sure. So BadgerMapping is so what we do, we're a software company, and we help field salespeople. We provide them with an application that is on their phone, their Android or their iPhone, whatever, and also on their computer. And what it basically does is takes their customer data and makes it really useful for them when they're in the field or when they're planning to be in the field. So we connect into their CRM, or they upload their information, and we make then we give them a bunch of tools that take the inefficiencies and challenges of field sales and make them a lot more efficient. So people end up driving less, seeing more customers, that sort of thing. And so why I'm here today is I have a fair amount of expertise in field sales, and my background was in field sales. And so, that's why we're talking about how field sales teams can work on this transition to being inside salespeople, at least temporarily.
Well, let's start with that point. Is one of the things I hate from the things that are being published these days, LinkedIn, ad nauseum, the new normal. First of all, we have no freaking idea what the new normal is going to be. And I don't think it's this. So if you want to speculate, invite you to speculate. Mm-hmm. What do you think the future holds for field sales? It goes back to the way it was, or what?
Yeah, I think that we're looking at we're going to be out of our houses eventually here. I think once we're kind of through this, I don't know if I'm not, I don't have the expertise to say if that'll be in a month or 3 months or a year, but if I were going to guess, I would guess this summer people will be relatively out and about and just taking a different type of precaution than we used to. But I'm sure when people are listening to this in 6 months, they'll be like, "No, you idiot, we're still locked in here."
Yeah, that's right.
But thanks for your thoughts. I think that there are many industries that field sales is the best way to sell to customers in that industry. And as soon as we're allowed out of our houses, field sales will go right back to occurring. If it made more sense to just sell your wares online or with inside sales, a lot of companies would have already done it, because it's at least selling things online is usually cheaper, right?
Potentially, right?
But there's many industries where if you do that, you'll lose market share and not win the same deals, or you'll lose margin on those deals to a degree where it made more sense to have someone, for a variety of reasons, go out and get in front of your customers. And so we'll be back to doing that as soon as this is all over.
Yeah, and I would even venture to say that some companies that have embraced inside sales, as some SaaS companies, some similar to you, except maybe depending on the size of accounts they're dealing with, they're finding that for some of these enterprise opportunities that actually, they need to start traveling some more. They need to start being in the field more to not only close the deals, but also service the customers.
And shorten sales cycles and just, be more competitive.
Right.
I think I think especially in technology, we've moved. There's been this movement towards inside sales, but like you say, I think a lot of people are overusing it and would do better as their price point, for example, has gone up, or as they've started to work with larger customers, they would do better if they got in front of their customers. If you're charging somebody more than $50,000, you better have taken them out to a steak dinner and done some outside sales work. You just got to build that trust. You've got to be face to face.
I use the example typically when I'm presenting $100,000. If you've got a $100,000 CLV on a customer, if you don't get on a plane, someone like me would, and they're going to go win that business.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And it's just it's worth it and I'd say at a price point lower than $50,000, it's worth it because it shortens sales cycles. You'll beat competitors more often.
Yeah.
It's and a lot of people that were already in business for a while, this is obvious news to them. Like go try to explain to a med device guy why he should move to inside sales, and he'd tell you that you're nuts. But for the software industry, I think because a lot of it started inside with kind of the explosion of ISVs and apps, et cetera, they started inside, and so now they're kind of bumping their heads on should be on the time when they really should be moving to outside sales,
or at least integrating more outside sales into the process, right? Because I mean,
right?
I mean, technically,
a hybrid.
Yeah, I mean, technically, for most of my career, even when I was building teams as a VP at startups, oftentimes individual contributor to start it, if first person in the door. Yeah, I'm spending 75% of my time in the office and 25% in the field. So.
Absolutely, yeah, and I think that was the history of software sales. I mean, when I was a field salesperson for outside sales, I was in the office probably 2 to 3 days a week, and on the road 2 to 3 days a week, and that was just the balance. And that was 15 years ago. But today, I think there's a lot of software companies realized it was cheaper to have people not have to travel around, and they could get more phone calls out, and they were measuring by the metrics of like activity,
right?
And they moved away from field sales and really focused in on inside sales, which can make sense at a high velocity, low price point. But especially if you're moving up market and selling bigger deals, it makes a lot of sense to get your guys out in the field.
All right, so I agree. So let's look at it in this environment here, where we've had nationwide and certainly in all the major metropolitan areas, shutdown orders, people working from home. What's the single biggest challenge for field sales teams right now?
Well, I mean, the biggest challenge is, and obviously from my perspective, running a company, the biggest challenge is making payroll right now. I mean, just the world has pressed pause on revenue to a large degree, and 100% revenue gone in a lot of industries, but or some large percentage gone, and so the challenge. The immediate challenge for a management team, sales manager, or management team in general, is deciding how they're going to keep making paychecks. And so does that mean? And so I guess you kind of have to approach that problem. Well, I've got to save money. Where am I going to save it? Or I've got to get money. So there's obviously loan opportunities like the PPP that the government's putting together. And, right now no money has been issued, but a lot of applications are in. So we'll see where that goes, but hopefully that'll kind of start hitting the market and everyone will keep their salaries here. For people that have had a more severe downturn, that'll only last them 2.5 months, right? Of being able to make paychecks. So if you were selling beer to bars, you were selling a bunch of beer. Maybe you were selling $1 million of beer a month 2 months ago, and now you're selling $0 of beer per month this month. So, you need those loans to keep making payroll. For a lot of companies, it's for only a few companies it's gone up. For some companies, things have just become flat, maybe because they are on more of a recurring revenue model. Like no one quits their email right now, for example. I mean, you're going to keep paying for your monthly services there, but most businesses are somewhere in the middle, where they have less revenue than they did, but they still have meaningful money, and so they're looking to tighten the belt a few notches, and they're hoping the money is going to come in from a loan perspective. If I were in that position, well, I am in that position.
Yes.
the way I approach that problem, and I haven't taken any furlough actions yet, or I haven't laid anyone off. But I would approach that as a sales manager. If I made the decision that, hey, okay, my sales team is where I have to tighten the belt as opposed to my engineering team or my marketing team, et cetera. If I were, since it's salespeople listen to this, if I were the sales manager, I would, and I had been told by my CEO, hey, we've got to tighten the belt a couple notches, drop 20% of cost. I would look at the team and I would think, okay, well, is it better for me to let go of the bottom 10% or 20% of the sales team, or is it better to lower everyone's salary by 20%, maybe, and consider giving them a day off a week, for example? Like, okay, don't work Fridays, everyone, but also I'm lowering your salary by 20%. and that, I think that kind of just depends on the team. If there's some people that maybe you're thinking about letting go of eventually anyway because it wasn't working out that well. Maybe you have brand new reps that haven't scaled up that you're not then that might be a good place. But that's kind of, I think, depends on the team which direction you want to go there to whether you want to tighten the.
Well, in your own business, selling to field sales organizations.
Right.
Have you just seen demand dry up, or are people still saying, look, we still have to sell, but I've brought these people inside. They need maybe tools to be equipped with tools they weren't equipped with before. I mean, what are you seeing in that regard?
I mean, I would say that people are in a wait and see mode and not, new sales have really frozen up. We do have some people that they know that they've known for a while they needed this, and they're just because they have extra time to look at it now, they're actually getting around to buying it and getting it set up. So that's actually been floating us a bit. But most of we're not like reaching out to new people and finding and letting them know for the first time that we exist, and then they're buying it right now. I think they're but
well, I mean, are your SDRs still making calls, or
the SDRs are making calls, but to people that were already involved in the system somehow. So they had looked at us before and just it wasn't the right time because they had too many other initiatives going on or whatever. So we're trying to re-engage with people that already were interested and knew about it. So that's kind of been the strategy there. But rather than cold calling and reaching out to brand new people, we're kind of looking back through our looking at the couch, turning over the couch cushions and looking for the quarters.
The quarters. Okay.
And they can be
much more aggressive.
Exactly. Well, they can be meaningful deals too. I mean, it's a lot of times, when people are looking at a new piece of technology there, or when people look at anything, they may just have more important priorities at the time. And so they can know, I would really like to have this. This would really be a positive investment for us. We'd make money if we did this, but I also, this thing over here is on fire, so I've got to put out that fire first, or hey, I've got to deal with this. So this is the important initiative for the year, so I've got to deal with this first, but I'll circle back to this. We're seeing people circle back. Now, that being said, there's also a lot of people pausing their accounts. And I think that's important to let people, if they're paying you on a stream, like software usually is. But a lot of companies too, I think it's, a lot of things. If people need to pause your service, it's very important, I think, to let them. Because I think a lot of people, you're going to find it's not really a negotiable. A lot of people's business just went to zero, and hopefully this doesn't last long, and you want them to, be able to scale back up and come back on when they're able to. And so it's important to, I think, work with people. Just like if you were a landlord and you had a bar as you had a bar as a customer, you don't want to kick that bar out on the street and not rent to them anymore, because they'll be back in a few months. We will drink beer once again.
We will. In fact, I think when we come back, we'll probably drink a lot of beer.
I'm still drinking a lot of beer.
Well, I am too. My wife, told me the joke the other day about, we all hear about the freshman 15 we gain as first year in college. You eat a lot of food. Well, now it's the COVID-19, which is everybody locked at home is stress eating, as I know we are. And we're trying to exercise, but we're very fortunate. We have a Peloton in our house, so we ride that every day. But we're not out running, taking long walks like we did before. So
I've got the knockoff Peloton, and it's been a real lifesaver. I think that's been huge.
Yeah. Okay. So let's focus on the field sales reps themselves, though. So is your feeling that for a lot of your customers, that field reps, more so than maybe, a SaaS rep selling inside sales onto an application to a variety of customers, that if it's a type of product that needs to be sold outside, that economic activity has dropped more precipitously there?
It depends. I think that in some industry, it's just industry by industry. So if you're selling beer to bars, your sales just went to zero. If you're selling,
and just so people understand, my impression is that the guys that are driving the trucks are really in quasi sales roles, right? A lot of those companies?
Yeah. If you're, a lot of the times they're taking orders, they're in a sales role, and they're delivering the beer.
Yeah.
All three. At other beer companies, it would be, they've got a delivery team and they've got a sales team. And so the people that actually show up and do the deal, they and manage the relationship. They don't also have a truck full of beer. But so it just depends company by company, and and we service single seat companies, right? So meaning there's one sales guy, and that could be a guy making beer out of his garage, and he's keeping track of 100 bars he's delivering his beer to. Or we also service Fortune 500 companies that have 500 salespeople, and so there's a wide variety that we're seeing, and people are reacting differently. I think industry is the most important thing. Like if you're selling beer to bars, you're massively impacted, 100% impacted. If you are selling, heart stents to hospitals, you are likely selling the demand for heart stents has not changed. So you're still interacting the same way. And if the doctors have a question about the heart stents or the relationship, they need to interact with their same rep. And so now you've moved from a face-to-face sales situation to a temporary inside sales situation.
Yeah. Well, I was also thinking sort of, large industrial supplies or, things like that sort of what we think about manufactured goods that are sort of the province of outside sales teams. That it's for some that have really depended on that human touch, the personal touch to stay connected, that it's got to be a little bit of a jarring adjustment for them to suddenly start trying to do that over Zoom as we're doing here. Just because it's good, but it's not quite the same.
Yeah, you need some different skill sets, I think, and presenting, for example, is just a completely different animal. If you're presenting a new product or trying to do a new sale over Zoom, it's totally different than being in the room. And I didn't mean for that to rhyme, but it did. And you need to leverage different skills too. Like you treat your sponsor in an organization becomes way more important. You always need a sponsor to get a complex sale done, and probably more than one. But to do your selling on the inside of the organization, someone who believes in the product, has already looked into it, usually knows the value, understands the value, and is there to kind of help you navigate the choppy waters of their organization and get the decision makers on board. And that's easier to do when you're in a field role, to kind of have those relationships with that sponsor and to communicate, kind of have the casual conversations with them and get them to do stuff for you to push the deal down the line. You need them more than ever when you're remote, because when you're talking to the decision makers and you're in a Zoom meeting with 5 people or 20 people or whatever it is, it's very hard for you to read the room. It's very hard for you to take people's temperature the same way. And you need your sponsor to kind of follow up and have calls with them beforehand to figure out what their objections are going to be, so you're sure to address them. You need them to follow up afterwards with the key people to get their actual genuine take, as opposed to just what you're able to glean in the moment.
Well, I think that's a critical point. I mean, this is I think for people who are making this transition is, there is the temptation when you move to virtual, is, to your point, is let's get all the stakeholders in a room, right? On Zoom, so everybody can hear it. Whereas if you're selling in person, you're going to most likely grab those people individually, one-on-one. No matter where your sales team is working from, RingDNA can enable them to be more productive and effective. RingDNA offers a complete platform for remote sales teams that gives reps the tools they need to connect with more prospects and create more opportunities and drive more revenue no matter where they're working from. And managers can get real-time insight they need to coach reps to success. Win more deals from anywhere on the planet with RingDNA. Learn more about how RingDNA helps remote teams at ringdna.com/remote work. That's ringdna.com/remote work.
New alarm bells ringing tonight on the coronavirus outbreak in this country.
Doctors say the virus is spread through droplets when someone coughs or sneezes.
And I think the business community, it's in their interest that people actually stay home and stop the spread.
For a business that can allow more employees to telecommute, we want you to do that.
Hi, friends. I'm Andy Paul, host of the Sales Enablement Podcast, and I want to encourage you to listen to my brand new special 6-part podcast miniseries titled Selling with Purpose. The team behind Sales Enablement Podcast and I put together this incredible series of inspiring conversations exploring what it means to sell with a mission greater than just hitting your numbers in this era of COVID-19 and beyond. So tune in to hear from world-class enterprise sales leaders and learn how their 6 companies will close $50 billion selling remotely. See how they've supported essential workers with the products and services they need to stay safe and thrive during this time of crisis. Subscribe to Selling with a Purpose now on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, or wherever you listen to podcasts. And yeah, the dynamic is completely different. I mean, people will say things one-on-one. They're not going to say in a group setting. And for if you're selling anything with any sort of complexity, you sort of rely on those individual conversations to really understand the truth of what's happening.
Yeah, this moving. If you're an outside salesperson, there is very likely a reason that your company has been selling with outside sales, and it's probably these are often more complex sales, and you're kind of neutered by being asked to go inside, and so you need to kind of compensate for what you've lost with by skills like really having your sponsor work for you and really do stuff for you. That there's ways to compensate for that damage.
Well, I think part of it too is to not just fall prey to the easy, which is let's get 4 people in a room, but say, look, it's going to take a little more work, but I have to set up 4 individual meetings. I don't want to give up this individual connection I had with this person and suddenly make it a group connection with these group of 4 stakeholders, because then you're suddenly in a much weaker position. Yeah,
and I think a lot of times field salespeople, like they're subconsciously doing things in these sales situations they might not even be aware of that are things that are making them successful, and you have to do them like working with a sponsor, or just intuiting that there's an objection from that person in the corner by their body language, and so you're able to respond and elicit the objection and then overcome the objection. And now over Zoom, you're kind of just like pointing to your slides and hoping that people are looking at them and not on their email or something. It becomes a very different interaction, and things that have come very naturally and that you've always just been doing for the last 20 years as a field salesperson maybe don't work inside. And really, this is not the optimal way to sell for your industry in the first place, for a good reason, which is why you were an outside salesperson in this industry.
Well, and I think to that point, though, it's a fantastic point, because I had that in my notes as well to bring up, is that, when you're selling in person, you use all of your senses, basically, to be alert, right? Body language, nuance, the unspoken questions that you can read on someone's face. Is that I think there's a tendency inside to speed up. And when you make that transition from being in the field and suddenly you're forced to sort of deal remotely with these customers you've had this personal connection with, is you need to slow down.
Yeah, you need to communicate differently. It's harder to communicate over Zoom. It's harder for people. People don't listen as well. It's not as engaging. It's not as interactive. It's not as much of a conversation. You can't read the body language. I think you need to present differently if you're over Zoom than if you, and I keep using Zoom, whatever presentation mode you're using. If you're on Zoom, you need to present differently, and you're not as funny over the phone, and you're not as charismatic over the phone,
or even on Zoom, you're not as charismatic.
Yeah, that's what I mean. Yeah, like Zoom or over the phone. In person, a lot of field salespeople are, they're really good in person, and now you put them in, lock them in a room, and things aren't going to go as well. And so you do need to be mentally flexible and ready to make a shift. You need to communicate differently. You need to really shorten what you're saying. People's attention spans,
Exactly.
A, people are stressed out right now, but B, I mean, just over a Zoom, people's attention spans are a lot shorter and they don't listen as well. They understand and hear less of it and retain less of it. So, maybe your 30-minute presentation really needs to become a 10-minute presentation, or you're
Exactly.
just going to lose people. So, and you have to do it differently. You need to, engage them, take a poll of how, like ask people questions, give little quizzes, get their opinions, keep people engaged. It's different to engage people over a Zoom meeting than it is, when you're actually standing in front of them and in a room.
Right, and I think whether you're presenting or doing a discovery call or a qualification call, your point about questions is just so spot on, right? Is that, and it's not asking people, well, are there any questions? If you ask people, hey, anybody got questions? They're going to say no.
Right.
So
absolutely.
So you either have to have ask a question, sort of like, you summarize a point you just made, right? We can do X, the value to your organization would be Y. What would the value be in your perspective for that? Or, just something that clarifies and confirms or doesn't confirm, highlights a difference of opinion, but not a generic, hey, do you have any questions?
Yeah, eliciting good conversation is more challenging, and you have to keep it shorter. You have to keep it simpler. Like the slides have to be simpler. The point has to be cleaner. You got to trim away the fat and tighten everything up. You have to transition better when you're speaking over Zoom or over the phone than you have to when you're in the room with someone. When you're in the room, they're reading your body language too. They can tell you're moving on to the next point. They can. It's easier to connect the dots when you're face to face. We have all these innate human communication skills and listening skills and speaking skills that we use when we're in a room with someone. Trust building, and all those things. A lot of those things are lost over Zoom or over the phone. And if you're connecting the dot between one point to another point, you've got to kind of, when you're speaking, prepare them that you're making this change, and make sure they're with you and make sure they get the jump from one thing to another. And it's just a lot easier to lose people and have people not be able to pick up the thread of what you're saying or really understand the why it's so important that they act, and why is it so important that they act now, and why is it so important that they do it with you, that you can get these things and see that people are gently nodding their heads if you're in the room with them, and you lose all that here.
Yeah. Well, unless you, again, on Zoom, unless you summarize pause every 5-10 minutes, summarize what you just talked about, maybe, transition slide to slide and ask a confirming question, whether people understand, right? Confirm their understanding of it before you move on. Because to your point, otherwise they'll be lost.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I think the other thing too is in every interaction that you have with somebody, if you've been accustomed to being in front of them and suddenly you're not, I think you also want to start thinking more graphically. And, an image can speak louder than having 5 bullet points on a slide. And you really want people to take one thought away per slide or per, 5 or 10 minute interval of your conversation or whatever. Is you just got to keep it really chunked, make sure people understand it before you move to the next. Minimize the number that you're trying to transmit at any one time.
Yeah, I agree. It's just hard, all these points, and like people's understanding goes down when you're not in person. People don't hear you as well. Yeah,
it just gets worse.
Right. Yeah. So you're absolutely right. Simpler, images, all that is better. Also, I think in this environment, you have to maybe step up how, I want to say like flamboyant or like outgoing or how engaging you are. You got to channel your inner newscaster. If you're in a situation where you're presenting over Zoom, I think you want to turn the dial up 20% compared to the way you would have if you were in person. When you're if you think about like how people are on TV, like, everyone's just bigger, right? Like, so to connect if you want to connect with an audience through a television, on television, they've got too much makeup on. Everybody's wearing a bunch of makeup. The men are wearing makeup. The women are wearing makeup, and they're wearing
makeup.
they're wearing a ton of it, right? And they're very animated, much more animated than you would be in person. Or else because it's very easy to come off as very robotic, I think, things are more boring over a Zoom or over the phone than it is when you're in person. And so you want to turn things up a little bit so you keep people excited and engaged.
I agree. I think to that point, it's a great point. We don't talk about enough is, we've switched to Zoom, and if we look at the people that attract our attention on TV, they are slightly amplified. And that's part of the job of being on, right? And so you can still be on and be authentic to who you are personally. It's not like you're assuming a new personality, just being 5 to 10% more than you were normally.
Yeah, and I think you do that naturally when you're presenting. Like I remember taking like presentation classes in business school, and them telling me to turn it up a notch. Like if you're giving a presentation, you want a little more energy, a little more inflection in the voice, be a little more engaging. And it feels weird because it's not totally you. It's a little bit of an amplified version of you. And I think here you may want to take that one step further. Be even a little. So if normally you were sitting around with your buddies, you'd be way more low key than you are when you're giving a presentation, and you want to kind of move it up one more notch to if you're giving that presentation over Zoom.
Yeah, well, I tell people is just use the adrenaline, right? I mean, a lot of times people, they feel nervous and they're saying, well, I've got to calm down, right? I don't want to. And it's like, no, why don't you go the other way? Why don't you ride this adrenaline, right? This is excitement. This thing is powering you forward. If you know your material, take it for a ride. Take that adrenaline for a ride.
Yeah. Well, and there, in that vein, stand up when you're giving a presentation. If normally you're standing giving a presentation, don't sit down just because you're doing a Zoom. Like, move the camera up and stand there, and because your voice sounds different if you're standing. You're speaking more with your diaphragm, and you're able to move and be more energetic and wave your arms around in a different way than if you're just sitting on the telephone, like laid back in a chair.
Well, and to that extent is stand up and use a whiteboard if you have one.
Yeah, absolutely. And still dress professionally, right? Like the same, if you were going to pitch in a suit, and normally you can still put on a suit. And, I guess that's kind of, you want to be appropriate, I guess, but like I do see people in situations where they basically look like they're in their pajamas, and you're like, hey, we're still doing business here. Like dress to impress.
Yeah. Well, I think there's a lot to that is that it's a matter of consistency. I think mental consistency, right? If you perform at your best when you're dressed, as you said, in a suit and you're presenting, you're selling financial service products, then don't wear anything but when you've got an important meeting, because that mental consistency will say, I perform my best when I'm dressed like this.
Yeah. And they expect you to dress the way that you are normally dressing, I think. And, and there's other things that there's other ways you want to be professional when you're in kind of a Zoom environment. You want to make sure you're still making eye contact, but you're not making it with a camera. You are making it with a camera, not a person. Mm-hmm. One thing I've seen people do to help with that is they put like a mirror or I'm not doing this right now, but it'd be a good idea. You put a mirror or a picture of someone behind the camera, so you can still make eye contact with a person, and that makes you. It helps you connect with the audience if you're naturally able to be looking at a human while you're talking. I think sometimes we feel disconnected if we're just looking at the wall.
As long as it's not yourself. I mean, I think that's distracting. I mean, I was always taught when I was being taught public speaking is, never practice looking in a mirror, right? but yeah, I think having a target above the camera is not a bad idea, right behind the camera.
Yeah, having something I think is helpful. And you want good lighting. You want to think about your lighting. And you see a lot of little advertisements around the web right now. on
Face
social media,
cameras,
et cetera,
yeah.
for little like lit things that sit on top of your computer and then make you look better. For salespeople, I think that's a key thing, and I don't think they're expensive.
No, I've got actually LED panel lights here, and $100. I mean,
and you look great.
Well, it's the makeup that I'm wearing that's really made all the difference to it.
Yeah, your forehead doesn't look shiny at all. It looks like you're really powdered up there.
My makeup is that I haven't shaved in 5 days, so that
me neither. Well, yeah, I went. I was doing this. I went to LinkedIn. They've got these training courses, and so I was sales training courses that I was doing for them, and they make-upped me all up and did my hair. So I was definitely looking my best then. I'm definitely looking my worst now. I even gave myself my own haircut, which didn't go that well.
I really can't tell. I think that's the beauty of Zoom, that we really don't know. So
there you go.
Yeah,
well,
my hair.
That's important too.
But by the time we get out of here, my hair could be down to my shoulders again. Who knows?
There you go.
Just like college days.
Well, I just cut mine the other day with my, little dog groomer that I used. It was great.
Yeah, well, you clearly care more than I if you feel like you have to cut your hair during the shutdown. No, we're still sending checks to our hair cutter, but even though we're not going, which I think people should be doing, but if they can afford it. But I'm gonna tough it out. We'll see how it goes in a couple months. So
yeah, we'll be fine.
All right. Well, Steve, anything else before we go?
I mean, I think we've covered all the important stuff here. I mean, I think in the end, field sales is there's a reason that people sell certain products in the field, and it is the best way to sell them. But the goal right now, I think, is to just tee things up to make the year. People should concentrate on having a successful year, if not a successful if this next quarter. Q2 may suck, but focus on the year and focus on making your sales goals for the year. And then I think while we're locked inside here, just field salespeople should focus on keeping moving sales cycles forward to the best of their ability, and that way when we get back out, we can hit the ground running. Perfect.
All right, Steve, thanks very much. So if people want to find out more about BadgerMapping, where can they go?
So BadgerMapping.com is the best spot. You can always search for me on LinkedIn, Steve Benson, and I think I'm Steven Benson on there, and then just look up Badger Maps, Steve Benson. I'm easy to find. If just for enduring all my blathering here, and if they do need field sales software, your listeners just mention this podcast, and my team will give you 2 months free of the software to try out and kick the tires.
Perfect. All right. Sounds like a good deal. Steve, as always, pleasure to talk to you.
Always a pleasure. Talk to you soon.
Okay, folks, thanks for listening. We're so grateful for your support of the show. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe to this podcast, Sales Enablement with Andy Paul, on iTunes or wherever you listen to podcasts, and leave us a 5-star rating. You can do that all on your phone in less than a minute as soon as this podcast is over. Me and my team would really appreciate it. So thank you so much. Until next time, I'm your host, Andy Paul. Good selling, everyone. RingDNA is the leading sales enablement platform that uses AI to help scale business growth. Trusted by the top companies across the globe, RingDNA offers a suite of powerful tools for every sales role. The RingDNA Dialer radically improves sales productivity and call connection rates, while guided selling helps reps know exactly what to do and when to do it. Conversation AI uses artificial intelligence to surface the most impactful coaching opportunities in real time. So, no matter where your team is working from, the RingDNA platform can help them exponentially increase call connections, opportunities, and revenue.
Learn more at ringdna.com/platform. That's ringdna.com/platform.